Hello and welcome to another Filmmaker chat. So this edition is not being live streamed because we experienced some technical difficulties. So we are pre-recording this and then putting it online for you guys to watch later. And normally I do these as a Patreon exclusive, but I live stream them so that all of you can watch them live. But if you ever want to rewatch a Filmmaker chat besides this one, because you missed it or you just wanted to rewatch it and get the information, you can support me on Patreon for $10 a month and get access to all of the Filmmaker chats I've done. And there's been some really fun ones. I did one with Omar Najam about like film theory, which was really funny, or not funny, but fun, where we talked about like angles and color and how it makes you feel and all this stuff. I've talked to screenwriters, I've talked to producers, I've talked to directors, lots of people. So definitely check that out. It's a great resource. Think of it like a live action podcast for your earbud listening pleasure. Nailed it. Nailed it. And eyeballs. So yeah, today I'm super excited because I'm sitting down with Rick Ives, who is a editor, a writer, a director. Am I missing anything, Rick? Are you more than just that? Can I put you in that bottle?
Mostly just human being walking this earth.
Human being. That's a good one. Yeah, put that one first on the resume. Rick is an assistant editor for Marvel. He has worked on TV shows like Loki, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Ruthless, and The Mandalorian. He was a dailies system editor for Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. He's done visual effects for films like Thor Ragnarok and Independence Day Resurgence. You've also edited several short films. And
some features.
And he recently directed and wrote an indie film. Was that your first, right? Your first feature that you directed?
For a feature, yeah. Yeah, wow. That's right.
I can't wait to talk about that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention your most important credit of all, is that you were on an episode of my podcast, Let's Rewatch, where we watched Stargate, and it was super fun.
The one I hold nearest and dearest to my heart.
And that one, I put a link in the description below. Definitely check out that episode. It was so much fun. It was really, and I'd never seen the movie, so I was very thankful that you brought it to me.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun watching that one again too. I'm glad everyone liked it so much.
I know, because sometimes we always warn people, like, don't bring your favorite movie, because it can be bad. Like, we can tear apart your favorite movie.
Your feelings will be hurt.
Yeah. So first off, I want to talk to you about all of your impressive editing work. And because this channel is really for indie filmmakers and people who are just starting out, can you briefly go over what an assistant editor is and what their job responsibilities are?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different on an independent movie versus a bigger budget thing. All the editing jobs I've had as an editor, I was my own assistant.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And a lot of times that's how it goes on the low budget stuff. You're just doing all the work yourself, which is fine and it's fun. When you get onto the bigger level, assistant editing takes on a little bit different job. And people always ask, oh, so you work on Marvel movies, you're like the editor or whatever. Well, no, I'm the assistant. And their eyes just glaze over.
Nobody
knows what that means.
But it's so important. Like, if you've ever been a video editor, like, assistant editors do all the hard work, really. The hard organizational.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not very fun because it's not creative, right? The editors get to sit there and play around with the puzzle pieces and put in new music and figure out what's funny and what's working or what's scary. And the assistant editor is just there doing all the technical work, like making sure all the media is online and you can find a sound clip that you need or a piece of music. A lot of times that can get a little tedious, but if you imagine when you're shooting something for 3 to 6 months and you're shooting 3 to 5 hours a day, at the end of all that, you literally have hundreds and hundreds of hours of media to go through. And a lot of those scenes were shot on multiple days, multiple locations, out of order. And your goal as an assistant editor is when the editor sits down in that chair with the director, whether it's the day after they shoot or 6 months after they shoot, if the director says, I think we had a shot on this day where the
because they always know.
This,
they always know too.
You would be surprised how well they remember what they were looking at. And the editor does not want to be the one to say, I'm not sure about that, because that's not very professional. No. What they want to be able to do is go in to all the assistant editors' work, type in a line of dialogue or type in a date or search a sound file and be able to pull that up as quickly as humanly possible.
Totally.
So a lot of the work that the assistant editor does is to be as organized as possible so that they really can do that. A director's time is expensive. An editor's time is expensive. Everyone who's working on set is being paid a lot of money. We don't want to waste time. Everyone's sitting in the couch looking for, a clip from 6 months ago. We want to be able to pull it up right away.
Yeah.
So, but you want to know exactly, like down to the nitty gritty, what an assistant editor does?
I think that's great. Yeah. Just organization, like naming of clips, maybe syncing of clips.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll do all that. A lot of times these days, the syncing will actually happen in the daily step. So before it gets into editorial.
Well, that's nice.
But if something is high speed, a lot of times if they're shooting slow motion, they're also rolling sound. And if you're real technical, you know that the sound won't sync up with the slow motion anymore. So we'll go through and respeed all that stuff so that you have a slow motion version and a real speed version. And then you'll have to sync sound for the 24p stuff. So there's a little bit of sound syncing involved. But you're also marking every single time that the director says action, which could be multiple times through a take. You're also checking all the color to make sure it's consistent and nothing's broken, in the pipeline. You could be renaming clips to what a particular editor wants them to be named as. Every editor has different preferences on how they want things organized, so you're just doing that to make sure that's all done. And then another thing that a lot of people don't realize we do is called script sync in Avid, where you can go through with a text file of the script and mark every line of dialogue on every shot.
Oh, wow.
And it's nice because when a whole scene is done, you can go through the script, click on a line of dialogue, and you can see all 50 takes of just that line.
Oh,
so wow. It's a lot of work over the course of, a couple months. It's not so bad day to day, but that's a big piece that's real helpful. I think more and more editors are using these days.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the kind of stuff that fills up your day.
Wow. And does that place like markers on your timeline?
No, it doesn't. Okay. In Avid, it doesn't work quite like that.
Okay, you're in Avid.
You actually look at it like a script. So you'll pull it up and it looks kind of like a PDF, except there's a whole bunch of dots on it. And you can click on which clip you want and which line of dialogue you want, and it'll go straight to it.
Oh, wow.
Or you can highlight them all and push play, and it'll play every line.
Oh, my God.
Then take one, and then take two, then take three, then take four, then take five, then set up take one, take two, or however many it goes.
Oh, wow. I never did. Yeah. I never got to do. Rick and I both went to the same film school. We went to Brooks Institute of Photography back when it existed, and they had an Avid class, and I never got into it because the timing or something, or like back then you also had to buy the version, the like student version.
Yeah, I feel like the Avid class didn't come until the tail end of when we were there.
Yeah,
it was all Final Cut. And you can thank Apple for getting themselves on all those campuses.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to learn Avid when I was in college and never could get it to work either. And it's only been in the last 3 years or so that I've really forced myself to do it.
Wow.
Because it's an industry standard for the type of filmmaking that I want to do, and I've always just been doing daily software and Premiere. Finally, I just bit the bullet. I'm like, I gotta learn this thing.
Is it much different from Premiere, or do you find it?
No, everything's there. I mean, there's a couple key differences that you probably don't want to go into,
right?
But I mean, it's just a tool like a hammer or a saw.
Yeah.
you're just doing this thing with it, and whatever you need to do, you can do it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of where the buttons are and how to
Right.
get to that.
Yeah. Like once
So
you
it's a little
learn
bit different.
one editing software, it's just a matter of the keyboard shortcuts now.
Yeah, if you know editing software already, then the real thing you're doing is just figuring out how to do what you already know how to do. And then every day you just find 2 or 3 new things. Okay, put that in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Next day, learn a couple more things, and then the nature of assistant editing is doing the same thing over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
once you've done that for a few days, it's not really that bad.
Nice. Yeah. Well, you kind of touched on it already, but let's talk about how important project organization is, and maybe if you have any tips for newbies that they should keep in mind, and not just like there's organization within your project file in your editing software, but then there's also file organization on your hard drive. That's super important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I like to do is come up with a number scheme. So like number 1 will be, or 01 will be all the master footage, 02 would be all the sound,
Oh, okay.
03 would be the save files, 04 would be visual effects incoming,
Okay.
05 might be visual effects outputs, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And each editor might have a different, it doesn't really matter, but I like to even keep it as organized as what's coming in on what day, so that if someone says, oh yeah, I sent it to you back on this date, I can search for that folder and find it as it comes in.
Oh, interesting.
And then a lot of times, personally, I still edit in Premiere, because I find the Adobe suite, a little more friendly to independent filmmaking.
Yeah.
So you can do visual effects, you can do sound, you can do editing all in there, Photoshop. So I have typically the same folder structure in Finder as I would in Premiere.
Me too.
So that you can find it each way. Yeah.
Totally.
And then whenever something comes in, I always have it, what is this? What date did it come in? And then it can go on the timeline. And I mean, you know how it works. Once you have a project going, you kind of get a whole big picture in your mind of where everything is, and you get real familiar with what shots are where and what scenes happen when.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But it's still real easy to just find that footage back in the project from the timeline that way, and then back onto the hard drive that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I don't know if a lot of newbies would know is you want to back everything up twice.
Ooh, yes. Yeah.
You do not want to burn a hard drive, drop it,
Mm-hmm.
lose a power supply, take it in your car and leave it at a friend's house.
Yeah.
You're always going to want to have a second copy of that stuff, because that is your movie.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's raw footage, you don't want to lose that. So you got to keep it organized in both places.
Yeah.
What else? I typically do searches for sound effects and music as I go, and then I'll always be saving those to a place that I can use for future projects, which means
like
you want to have it named in a way that you can search it again, like gunshot or crowd screaming or
totally
forest ambience, and then you can just go through and search for what you need.
Yeah. I think I even I have like a sound effects folder, and then I have like subfolders in there from like, sometimes it's subfolders depending on where like I got the sound effect from, and then in there it's like, ambience or room tones, or like you said, like gun noises or whooshes. I have a lot of whooshes.
Yeah, so many whooshes.
So many whooshes.
So many trailer hits and stings.
Yeah, exactly. And then, the hard drive thing you mentioned is such a good tip, because even I have fallen victim to that, where like I had 2 hard drives, but I forgot to update one of them and made a change, and then that hard drive dies. And so now I buy them in pairs, and I use Forklift to sync them, which is a program you can get.
Okay.
And I just like, whenever I'm using them, I plug them both in, and I have a working one and a backup one, and then I always sync to the backup one. But I also have a Drobo system that stopped working about a year ago, and I have to figure out why it's like not like it pops up on the computer, but anytime I try to sync footage to it, it just errors out. So I don't know if I would recommend the Drobo system. I've had a lot of problems, but if you can have like a raid system, that's great too.
The Drobo advertising execs are calling right
I'll
now
never
to
be
cancel
sponsored by
their
them
ad.
ever again. Listen, they know how I feel. They know.
Oh,
I've had many
called them so many
conversations.
times.
I've had to, because the first, like, I used to have one. Well, this is such a tangent. I had one for years that I loved and it worked great. And they just sort of, the like latest Mac operating software, they haven't been keeping up with like support for their software with it. And so it's just been a bit of a nightmare. But yeah.
If you're looking for a good copy program, I actually like DaVinci Resolve has a copy program built into it. We used that before.
Okay.
So
I
they
have
a
not
clone
used
tool.
DaVinci
That's how we
Resolve,
did all
but I've heard good things. Yeah.
People always ask, like, what's a good free editing software? And DaVinci Resolve is it.
Yeah.
Because you can get that for free, and it is a full version of the DaVinci software. I'm not sure how it's changed, but last I checked, the only thing you can't do is 4K and above or 3D.
Oh, okay.
And everything else is supported.
Yeah.
And when I do independent projects, I always tell people to use that software. A lot of times that's how it's going to be colored anyway, so it's not a bad idea to be familiar with it. But there's a clone tool in there that you can tell it, this is the red card or, you know, whatever thumbstick where the media is. This is the hard drive I want it to go to, and you send it there. And it will do a MD5 checksum for you and tell you, yes, everything's been copied safely.
Ooh,
and it's really useful.
Nice.
You can do multiple places at the same time, which is nice. So it's real fast. It's real easy to use.
Okay.
That'd be my clone tool of choice.
I have an actress friend where she edits her own stuff, and she's not a video editor at all. And she uses that program, and she's able to edit stuff. So I'd say if you have no editing experience,
if you want to edit on there, it's personally, I don't find it as fast as some of the other softwares. But if you're on a budget, then there's no reason not to go there because it will do everything that you need it to do.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with editing software anyways, then jump in because it's not that different.
Yeah, totally. So why don't we talk about how when you're assistant editing for a project, how do you work with the editor to help support them on a project? Do you sometimes do really rough edits for them? Do you like rough assemblies or anything? Or how do you interface with the editor much, or is it just sort of a handoff process?
So there's a couple different, actually, inside post-production, there's a couple different assistant editor roles. You could be a visual effects editor. You could be a dialogue editor. You could be a sound editor. You could be a first assistant editor. And then so far, I've always been a second assistant editor on these shows.
Okay.
So while I do see the editor and stuff, I mean, we'll be on a friendly basis and chat every day. I'm not directly working with them all the time.
Gotcha.
Mostly at the beginning of a project, they'll have some kind of white paper on, this is how I want my bins organized. These are the color markers I want. This is how I want my sound.
Wow, the color markers?
My clips named.
Like,
yeah, because
wow.
editors will say, I mean, everyone's different.
Yeah.
A red marker might be action, but a red marker might be a good line, or a red marker might be a problem. Like, oh, the iris changed right here, so we want to stay away from this.
Right.
Or a green marker might be action. You know, everything's different. I've worked with editors before who wanted a particular color marker on any lines that were ad-libbed.
Oh.
So they could go through and say, oh, this is an ad-lib line right here, and right here, and right here.
Oh, interesting.
So everyone will be different, and then you can imagine when you have thousands and thousands of clips, they're going to come in all different shapes and sizes, right? So there might be a scene 1A, take 1, but there also might be a no good clip in there. There might be some clips with MOS. There might be some clips that are at 48 frames per second, some at 96 frames per second, some at 20 frames per second. There might be A camera, B camera, C camera. And each editor will want each of those named in a particular way so that when they look at that name, they'll know exactly what clip they're looking at, which camera it's on, if it's any good, if it's a visual effects shot, if it's a lot of times they'll shoot like color charts and stuff at the end, or clean plates, and they'll want to know if that clip is a clean plate or not.
Gotcha.
So we'll put all that in the name. That kind of thing. But once it's set up, you know, at the beginning of a project, it's pretty autopilot after that. So we won't have much to talk about other than what scenes might be coming up. You know, once in a while, they need to shoot out a scene and have it to the editor real quick to do a cut so that they can know we got everything and we can trash that set.
Gotcha.
So sometimes we'll get calls and say like, hey, we got to clear out of the set tomorrow. Can you edit that like tonight? And then the editor will call us and say, hey, we need this first thing. I guess as soon as you get it to us because I'm going to be doing an assembly cut of it.
Wow.
And then, yeah, that's about all the work that as an assistant, second assistant, you might be working with the editor.
Yeah.
Once in a while, they've asked for some experimental sound design or stuff with subtitles. If there's something in another language, you might need to go through and type subtitles for that.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Wow, that's awesome. And during, the whole pandemic, do you have like a setup at home, type of situation? I'm assuming. An editing bay?
Yeah, so they ended up setting us up at home just so everyone could keep working. Again, there's nothing we do that can't be done in your house. I mean, it's just a computer.
Yeah.
We're not the people on set. Like, obviously, you have to have an actor on a set being shot with a camera and a camera crew. So that side of production needs to happen kind of the same way.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times, editors or assistant editors will say, hey, I don't feel safe in whatever condition, or I'm immunocompromised, and production might make the call, well, we're just going to make everyone set up at home, because if we're going to do it for half the crew, then we'll do it for everyone. And
right.
It just turns into Skype calls like this with everyone once a day, catching up, and then it's pretty nifty. I mean, I don't mind waking up at 5 a.m. to go to work like I would usually have to, except now I just walk to the next room.
You just roll out of bed.
Until noon.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's lunch break. I'm going to go take a shower because I haven't done that in 3 days.
Yeah. Well, you didn't see it, but I just got a new subscriber, which is really awesome. So thank you, new subscriber. There was a little pop-up that happened.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because I was totally listening to you the whole time, Rick, I swear.
Yeah. Hey, I believe it. Stop me when I'm rambling. Say no, that's not
that's fine. So I'm excited to talk about what is the difference between an assistant editor and or just what exactly is a dailies system engineer, because I'm sure there's a lot of people watching that don't know what a dailies system engineer is, and what the difference is between them and an assistant editor.
Yeah, sure. So it depends on the scale of the project, right? So if you're on an indie project, you might have someone who's a DIT who's backing up your cards. They might also be your assistant editor or your dailies person. Mm-hmm. Or I've worked on shows where they didn't have dailies set up, so your second assistant editor was the dailies person. You would just get the camera media and bring it into Avid directly and do all that work. But when you are shooting something like a Marvel movie that's shooting 6K on an Alexa and 3 cameras at a time, you're looking at 8 to 10 hours of footage a day. Is not uncommon. Wow. And it's all very big, uncompressed footage, and it takes a whole department just to keep up with backing those up into 2 places like we talked about, getting them, the master raw footage into a safe place and delivered to wherever the client is holding it. And then a lot of times they will have dailies colorist going through and coloring every shot that they shot every day.
Wow. Is that like a temp
to make sure
color correction? Just to sort of...
Yeah, okay. It's a temp color correction, but it's still 8 to 10 hour a day job where they just sit there and grade every shot.
Wow.
Because a lot of times you're shooting the second half of a scene that was shot a month ago, or you're shooting pieces that are visual effects that are going to be put into another scene that was already shot.
Right.
Or we're coming back to do reshoots and it needs to match the scene that was, done a while ago. Or it's shot over 3 days and we need to make sure all that footage matches. Or it's shot outside and the clouds are constantly changing. And so the color's changing on the camera. Yeah. Someone will sit there and grade every shot to make sure it matches.
Wow.
And then that will happen in the dailies. And then, like I mentioned, a lot of times they're doing the sound sync. They'll do some of the renaming. They'll check all the camera metadata to make sure it's accurate. Keep an eye out for all that stuff, and then just rendering all that stuff, because you can imagine how long it takes to render all that footage into editable material.
Totally.
The other thing that dailies will do is create offline versions to upload And then a lot of times those will go into the cloud, and then the director, producers, no matter where they are in the world, will be able to watch them the next day. So that will fall under dailies. And let's see, what else did I do?
And I'd just say, I'd add there, just in case anybody doesn't know what offline, so there's offline and online editing. And what that means is offline is you're editing with footage that's a lower quality. So you make like proxies of the original footage, because like Rick said, he's dealing with 6K footage that can really bog down your editing system. So you might...
It would be crazy to think you could keep 1,000 hours of 6K online to edit from.
Yeah, so you might...
At least today. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, that'll be the case.
Totally. So you might want to throw those into compressor or encoder or something and change them to 1080 or 4K or something smaller, so that you can edit your project with smaller files, and then when the edit is done, you reconnect to the bigger file size, and that's called the online editing, and then you export with the high quality. Does that sound right, Rick?
Exactly right.
Okay.
And that's the stuff that will be color graded again for the final. That's the stuff that will be sent to visual effects vendors to use for their visual effects stuff. And that's ultimately the product that you're going to be looking at if you go to a movie theater and watch it.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, you've also worked as an editor, as you said. You've edited short films and feature films, and I was wondering, how do you work with a director as an editor, and how do you balance their creative vision with your own artistic input? Because obviously you don't want to just be a drone that's just doing what they say. You want to have some some input.
Part of the fun of being an editor is that you get to have a creative vision, a little bit of it at least. The director's still king, but a lot of times they're open to ideas or queen, boss. Sometimes they'll shoot something they don't quite know how they want it yet. Sometimes they'll shoot it and they know exactly what they want, which is fine too. But in my case, as the editor, you want to be the audience, right? You're trying to watch it with fresh eyes every time that you see it. Look for mistakes, or look for moments that are boring, or moments that are too fast and confusing, anything like that. And a lot of times when you're working so close to a project as the director does, through the script phase, through the shooting, they know everything that happened on set. They know everything that they were trying to accomplish, whether they did or not. They know what they want it to be, and sometimes that's different than what it actually is. So the editor needs to be the person to say, look, this isn't working and here's why, or this isn't working and here's another idea, or hey, that was perfect, exactly what you shot, and here it is, and it's gonna win an Academy Award.
That's always the hope. Right?
For me, I kind of use the same approach when I'm reading scripts and giving feedback, or watching other people's projects and giving feedback, and I really try to look at what they want to be doing and understand what their intent is. Not try to make it my own, and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? That needs to fall in line with what their intent is, right? So you can't walk in and say, oh, this isn't a comedy, this is a drama. Try to cut it that way, because that's not what this movie is. You're not trying to change the whole product. What you want to do is say, oh, I see what you're going for here. I think this is along those lines, right? So I did a short a little while ago where we had the first shot was this guy walking off an elevator and all the way down the hallway, and it was like a 90-second one shot of him walking down, which was lit really well, and it looked cool, and he's listening to music, so you hear that music playing. He walks up to a door and knocks, and then they cut, and then this next shot was him at the door still knocking, and the door opens. Well, I have nothing to cut to from him walking down the hall and then into the shot where the door's opening. So it's going to be like this weird jump cut where it stops because that's the end of the footage, and then it starts again, right after that. So I sent them the version of the whole thing, and I said, hey, here it is. You're going to notice there's a weird jump cut right here, and we got to think about what to do. But by the way, I already have another version, which is what I think we should do, And you can look at that here. So instead of him walking all the way down the hall for 90 seconds, I did jump cuts on purpose to the music.
Oh, yeah.
And then we cut straight into the next shot of him knocking on the door and it opening.
Gotcha.
And in that, it felt like it was on purpose. And they said, oh, this is great. That's exactly what we want. We want to hurry up the intro because we don't necessarily need to see him walking that long down the hallway. And it doesn't feel weird when you're cutting out of that shot into the next thing. So it saves that. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for, right? Mm-hmm. What did they want to do here? What can we do to speed this up to make sure your audience isn't getting bored, and also make it flow in a way that doesn't seem amateur or like it was shot without a complete understanding of what they wanted it to look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like I'm also hearing the echoings of our film school video editor teachers of always get your actors clean into and out of the shot so the editor has something to work with, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how useful that is. And even, it's funny, even as I shot my own project a month ago, I was very cognizant of that. If someone's leaving and entering the scene, we got to see all that because I got to have ways, cut around this. And I was so confident. Oh man, I'm an editor already. I know exactly what I'm gonna get. And the first scene that I cut, a week later after we wrapped, I just teleported someone across the room. How am I supposed to? I did it myself. It's hard to think about.
Yeah.
When there's so much happening on set.
In the moment. Yeah.
So
totally.
you come up with ways around it, and I think it's okay. But yeah, there's a lot to think about. And it's not just that the director is inadequate or has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on, and it's difficult to keep all that in your mind and, have an idea of how this is going to flow.
Totally.
That's what makes the great ones really great, is they understand, how the storytelling process needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes a great editor great, is they can find ways to make that flow, whether it's there or not, if it was shot that way or it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've been on set as a director and had someone turn to me and say, well, does that work for editing? Because you have editing experience and it's really come in handy. So if you are a director, I highly recommend, take your hand at, even if you shoot, take a script from a movie and just shoot a scene and practice editing it, shoot it the way you want and practice editing. It'll be an eye-opening experience, I promise you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once in a while, even if you're just working with your editor, I wouldn't do this to the point that you're going to upset them, but try to get an understanding of why they can't do it the way that you want them to do it. And a lot of times I'll just show look, this is the take you have. This is the take we need to get into. Mm-hmm. This is what it looks like when you just throw it on the board. It's wrong. So we have to figure out something else to make it work.
Yeah, I always do. When I was editing, I used to edit a TV show, a reality TV show, and when I knew that what the director was asking for wouldn't work, I would still do it, because if you do it and you show them that it doesn't work, then they'll be like, oh, okay. But if you just tell them that it doesn't work, you're gonna get resistance. But if you show them, they'll be like, oh, of course, you're right.
Yeah, I always go in and cut every line that was in the script and make sure that it's in there. Every scene, I never drop any of that stuff. And even if it's sloppy in some cases, I say, look, this is what you have. And then if I can, I'll have another version queued up. This is what I think it should look like.
Yeah.
One time I was working with a big director. This is a lesson for me, who had directed a couple Disney movies.
Oh.
And I was editing this short for him. And I pitched him, when they were in the interview process, I want to cut this the way I usually edit, which is I just sit down and edit without looking at storyboards or anything. I just want to see the footage that you got and cut it together the way that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to edit it again based on what your storyboards were. So every time you cut to this, cut to this, cut to this, I'm just going to do that, even if it feels wrong to me. And I showed him both versions. And he said, yeah, I like the second one more, which was his. I'm like, you're right. So it isn't always just, this is the way I see it. It needs to be, but they
Mhm.
have a vision in mind, and ultimately it was the better choice to go with that way. So you got to be open to that kind of thing too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, is there any advice you would give to first time editors that you wish you had known? And how can they break into the industry? Which I know is a big
Um,
question.
Advice for first time editors, like what kind of thing are they editing if you're a first time editor? Just short films and stuff.
Student film, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Tell us in
the
the
big thing that I
comments.
run,
What are you editing, first time newbie
yeah,
editor?
the thing that I see a lot is people without vision for what they want anyways. They just go in and shoot and just hope that they've captured it.
Hmm.
But if you go in with intent and you're going to shoot uh, the way that you see this movie, shoot what you need, right? Don't just walk in there with the camera and let your actors do whatever and let the cameraman do whatever.
Hmm.
Have intent. Like, we're going to block this in a specific way, and we're going to shoot these specific angles. We're going to have them walk in at this time or not. Communicate that to your editor, and then as the editor, you need to have a vision of everything that they shot, and also edit with that intent.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have a particular shot that is the money shot, you got to put that one in first, kind of like an anchor point. If you have a couple good camera moves around that, different angles that you want to get in,
Hmm.
put those in too. If you have a good performance that the director really liked, like take 7 was the one, man. She was crying, but not too much, but just a little bit. It was just the right amount. You got to make sure you're going to build around that performance, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times it could be kind of daunting to just have all this footage and think, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Hmm.
But if you're going to find those key moments ahead of time, drop them in sort of on the timeline, where they might fall, and then kind of build around them. That's been one of the tools that I've tried to work on.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And especially in montage sequences, right? Like,
Oh,
I know
yeah.
I love this one. I know I love this one. I know this one. And I got this piece of music that's going to work. So I'm going to build around those. And a lot of times montages or moments that aren't necessarily, just dialogue driven are difficult because there's so many options.
Yeah.
But when you put in the stuff that you're sure about, you start taking away options from other things, which is good.
Hmm.
Right. So then you kind of focus on exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's been my approach for editing. The other thing that I always do for dialogue stuff is I treat myself like, not necessarily I'm an audience member in a seat,
Hmm.
but that I'm an audience member in the room
Yeah.
that this is happening in. So who do I want to be looking at for this line of dialogue? Who do I want to be looking at for this line? Whose reaction do I want to see?
Yes.
And at what moment?
Yeah.
So I will always be editing in that way, right? So if someone makes a joke, do I want to be watching them after that to see their reaction to the other people's reaction? Or do I want to cut immediately to someone else? Is that funnier?
Yeah.
That way?
Yeah.
Or if, depending on who the main character is, do I want to see them reacting to what the other person is saying to them? Or is it more important to see what that person is saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
A lot of times you'll hear screenwriters and stuff talk about who's the main character in a scene. Sometimes the main character of the movie is not in a scene.
Right.
So who's the main character of that scene? Well, you need to decide that. And whose point of view is this coming from, and who are we really exploring right now? It could be multiple people, but at any given moment, you need to know whose head you're inside of right now and who you're trying to empathize with.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind when you're deciding who to put in frame, or maybe to put both people in frame or 3 people in frame at the same time, instead of a close up. So that's the kind of stuff I look for when I'm editing, at least.
Yeah, those are great
tips. Question?
I love it. Yeah.
Let's see. As far as breaking in, the thing that I always heard when I was trying to do that was, who do you know already? Even if it's like a second uncle or someone that is a friend of your roommates or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to look down those avenues. I've found recently, I know there's a lot of Facebook hate out there, which is fine. But there's a lot of Facebook groups, believe it or not, that are looking for editors, looking for directors of photography, looking for writers. Or there could be local filmmakers. Like if you live in a filmmaking hub, I mean, Los Angeles is huge, but maybe you live in Kentucky and you're like, filmmakers in Kentucky. Well, look, there's a whole group here of people who are making shorts and looking for help on music videos or whatever it is. And that's a way to start building a network, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you start getting on those shows, even if it's low budget, even if it's free, maybe in your first couple cases, because you can afford to do that, make friends with those people. Let them know the day you show up, this is my goal. I want to be a cinematographer, or I want to be an editor, whatever it is. Make people think of you as that role, and then say, keep them in mind, or keep me in mind when the next project comes up.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times if you're on a show, everything's staffed already, so you're a little late to the game there. But you want to be on their radar for the next time, and then the next time, and then the next time.
Yeah.
And when you have that chance, don't let it slip away and not really get to it, or treat it like your math homework that you wait till the last minute. You want to show that you're ready to work hard, you're ready to work now. And even if it means you go to your full-time job during the day and then you stay up until 1 a.m. working on their project at night, then that's what you got to do. The other thing that I've started to do recently is, once you're friends with these people, keep an eye out for jobs for them.
Oh,
because when you're busy and something comes along that you can't take, you need to recommend people that you really like.
Yeah.
And they will return that favor for you down the road.
100%.
And there's no shame in saying, hey, I'm not available for this, but here's a list of 5 people that I think could be good. And I haven't been doing dailies for 2 years now, but I can't tell you how many times I get calls from big dailies houses saying, hey, can you recommend somebody? Hey, can you recommend somebody?
Wow.
And I always go to the same people, and I'm like, I got these guys. And I would say 80% of the time they end up landing one of those jobs.
Nice.
The people that I know. So, and hopefully that comes around if you're listening. Recommend me for some jobs too.
Right.
But that's part of the community, especially if you're in a smaller one. Like I'm in Atlanta right now. There's not that many people, even though there's a lot of work going on. I start running into the same people like multiple times a year. So if you're on good terms with all of them and you can, refer them to jobs, then they will, repay you.
Totally.
So that's the kind of stuff I would look out for.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all great tips. I have editor friends that I recommend for jobs. I have a director friend who, if I can't take something, I recommend him, and vice versa. And it's totally great. It works out well because especially if you aren't a full-time employee at a studio or something, we're all hustling, trying to get a gig, and having each other's back is really helpful. Okay. All right. I'm excited to put editing aside, as much as editing is fun and we love it. And I'm excited to talk about your directorial feature film debut. It is, right?
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Great.
And tell us about this indie feature that you wrote and direct.
Yeah, so one of the bad parts about editing is you're sitting in the room all the time thinking, oh, I could do better than that.
What? No.
And eventually you just want to, and that's where I was. I actually started screenwriting with no intent to ever show anybody this stuff as an editor.
Wow.
Right? Because I felt like if I could understand more why a script is put together the way it is, then I would become a better editor that way. If I understood why scenes are happening when they are, and why characters are written the way they are. And you can read a script, but it takes writing a script to realize how much blood, sweat, tears go into that, how much work and how hard it is to pull something out of nothing. And you have a lot more respect for what you're reading after that. So I started doing some screenwriting on my own, just with that in mind. So I've written a few, and eventually I had been editing for these guys in LA, these low budget features. And we had a good relationship, and I said, hey, I got an idea for something that we could do. I pitched it to them. They said, okay, let's see the script. So I wrote it, worked on it for a while. and they liked it. They said, let's do it.
Wow.
And they helped me produce it. We were supposed to be shooting it last year in May, June.
Oh, why not? Why didn't that work out?
Yeah, and you can guess. It's hard to, I mean, every filmmaker went through this last year. When you have something, but like you're working towards this,
Yeah.
and it's like gonna happen, and then something so big like this,
it's terrible,
takes us all down. And you remember at the time, it was almost week to week. Like, is this gonna be okay? Are we gonna open up maybe next month? Maybe next month? Maybe next month? And each time it's like twisting the knife a little further. No, this isn't gonna happen. So eventually at the beginning of this year, my wife and I were just like, you know what, let's just shoot it in Atlanta. There's no reason we can't do it here. So I didn't have as good of a network of filmmakers out here. Most everyone I know is in post-production, so I had to kind of drum up some names to do, all the crew positions.
Wow.
So that was the hard part, but I'm pretty proud with what we shot so far. It's obviously another low budget feature, like I had been doing with these guys. I wrote it the intent was to write this in a way that we could shoot it cheaply but have it look professional.
Nice.
And I think we pulled that off. So we still shot with Red cameras. We still had really good sound on set. We paid all the crew, even though we were very small.
Wow.
But it's one location. It's
one location
90%
for the whole movie?
Yeah, one location.
Wow. Yep. That's brilliant for your first feature. That's really good.
Thank you. It's 90% one actress.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, so it's a suspense thriller, so there's a lot going on, even though it's just her. I actually really like movies that are single location stuff.
Yes.
Every time one of those pops up on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I'm so drawn to it. Like, I just have to see.
Yeah.
I just have to see if they could pull this off.
Or even
there was
like
a couple
Alien,
that I really liked.
Like it's all in the spaceship. It's like kind of single location,
definitely.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a movie that came out a couple years back called Locke. I don't know if you've seen it. It's Tom Hardy. He's in a car for the whole movie.
Oh, wow.
Just on the phone. There was one that came out last year, which I really liked, called Vast of Night. Did you hear about this movie?
No, I'll have to check it out.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's kind of a Twilight Zone, 1960s Twilight Zone, type. It's kind of scary, kind of horror, kind of sci-fi, which was real low budget, but it was fantastic.
Wow.
Half of that movie is just watching people talk or listen to radios. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
And then the one that I really liked years and years ago was called Buried.
Buried. Oh.
Do you know this movie?
No.
Okay, this is Ryan Reynolds, and the whole movie takes place inside a coffin.
What? And it's Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's so good.
Wow.
And you think for 90 minutes, how could you just not do anything else except watch a person in a coffin? And it's fascinating. So I was like, if they can do that, I can do at least one room. So I was trying to think of, ways that we could shoot something on a budget and have it look good. So it's an abandoned building. It's a gal who is robbing a bank, and there is a bank somewhere else, and she's talking to a whole bunch of people on cell phones, and she's organizing this whole thing. So her crew is inside the bank doing her bidding.
Gotcha.
Right? And she has different accents and languages depending on who she's talking to, so none of them know that they're talking to the same person. So part of that is her performance, and you get to just watch her, do these things, which is kind of fun to see.
Wow.
And then everything that happens, it's a genre movie, so everything that happens in a bank heist still happens.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so double crossings, cops, what else? Backstabbings, who do you trust? Is this all going to go wrong?
Yeah.
It's all still happening, except you're hearing it, sort of like a radio play instead.
Oh, wow.
Through her eyes. And she's the one person back at a remote location trying to hold it all together. So you get to know all the characters that she's talking to based on their phone calls. And it's pretty stressful. The idea was that, is you watching a movie any different than you listening to a radio play? It's all fiction. You're not in the room. You're not in danger. Can we still have a suspense?
Right.
and care about people that we haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my thinking going into that. So
Interesting.
hopefully we accomplish that. I'm in post on it now. Obviously, I'm editing it too. And there's a lot of work that has to get done for a feature film between all the sound design and music and color and everything that has to happen. So
I bet.
hopefully I can have it for you to see soon. We're going to try to do some film festivals at the beginning of the year, and then I will let you know. But,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a fun experience.
Yeah.
So what else do you want to know about it?
I mean, casting must have been key here, right? Because you need this actress that could carry the whole movie. So how was the casting process?
There were two things that I knew would be difficult in making this movie. One is, can we keep it interesting? Just one person being in a room talking on a phone, sitting at a desk. And number two was what everyone told me when they read the script was, you're never going to find a person like this who can do it all, right? Because you can have people pretend to do accents, but you can always kind of tell it's not very good. And part of what I wanted to do was it be so good that when you watch it happen, because when you see that for real, you're like, wait a second. This actor that I've been watching for years is English? I didn't even know.
Right, yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, absolutely.
When you finally hear them talking.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like you're watching a different person, even though you know you're not. So I wanted her to be able to do that.
Wow.
And then we put this character through a lot emotionally. So she's got to be able to have the range to do, funny, sad, scared, stressed, all these things.
Yeah.
Over the course of, 80, 90 minutes. So we did like an open casting call through the service that they use, and I looked at a lot of reels and found this girl. Her name's Coco Marshall, and she just loves accents, right? So she has been doing accents. She speaks 4 languages already, and they're all so good. It's like you're talking to a different person every time.
Oh my God. Wow.
And I only found 3 or 4 women who could do it that well, and she was the one that really stuck out to us.
Wow.
And so I mean, that's a weird conversation to have, to like call up and say, hey, I really like your reel. This is the kind of thing I'm trying to do. I want you to be on board with this. It's going to be like you by yourself, and there's going to be a lot of dialogue for you to memorize, and we're going to be in a location that's an abandoned building, so it's not going to be very comfortable. You're not going to have a lot of other people to act with.
Probably not paying you a lot.
Are you on board? Yeah, are you on board with something like this? She said, of course. It sounds amazing.
Oh, wow.
So
that's amazing.
You can look her up, actually, Coco Marshall. She's been in a handful of indie features, and she's really great. And we just felt real lucky that we found her, because the rest of the cast is all from Atlanta. She was the one that we cast a year ago.
Okay.
Or that we found a year ago to do this. So we flew her out for it. And she was just great. Every day we were working in an abandoned building that was very hot. And she was, had like I said, no other actors to act off of for the most part.
Wow.
And surrounded by a crew of people just like watching her do her thing for literally 9 hours a day.
Yeah.
Almost no breaks.
Oh my gosh.
And she always had a smile on her face and never a complaint out of her. And it was amazing how well she could memorize that much dialogue, because we shot this in 11 days, and we were doing 10, sometimes 15 pages a day.
Mm-hmm.
And she would just show up, and she knew all her lines, and we say action, and she could go through a whole scene.
Wow.
And maybe give her a couple notes, and we'll do it again, and we'll go to a new angle.
Wow.
And it worked really well. Yeah, so you're right. We need to find someone who could carry the whole movie, and I feel like she did.
Wow.
So hopefully everyone else thinks the same.
That's amazing. Wow. Well,
let me tell you, the other weird thing that we did while we were shooting this was didn't want her really to just be acting to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up recording all the phone calls in advance.
Ooh, interesting.
Over Skype. So like we're doing right now.
Uh-huh.
And I sent microphones out to the cast wherever they were from Amazon, and gave them a little tutorial on how to record sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just got on one-on-one calls with me, with Coco, and with whoever she was talking to, and went through the script.
Wow.
For a whole night and did all their scenes together. Then the next night we did the next character. Then the next night we did the next character. And then I went through and edited all these phone calls with spaces for her performance.
Right.
And then she would just listen to, like, when she was at work or when she was traveling or driving around, she would be listening to the phone calls.
Wow.
And could practice her lines against the people who she'd already acted against.
Oh, wow.
And then on the day, we just pushed play on those same recordings, and she had it down. Like, she knew all the timing for every line.
That's amazing. Wow.
And so we could get through a lot of pages that way. And then in the edit, all I had to do was line up those exact same phone calls with them, and then all their dialogue is already in on the phone calls.
Wow.
So it was real fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and in that way, I felt like we got through a lot more pages than we normally would have. And it also wasn't like just her saying, oh, hey, pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right here. What do you need? Pause.
Yeah.
And then just hoping to like ADR that dialogue later.
Yeah. And getting the spacing right would have been, a nightmare. Are you?
Yeah, because this is supposed to be a thriller. I want it to be like fast, and all this dialogue needs to be snappy and feel like she's really talking to them.
Yeah.
And I don't just want to cheat, like, okay, cut, and then cut to the next line, and then cut to the next line, and then cut to the next line every time.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have whole stretches where she talks for 2 or 3 minutes at a time.
Wow.
Like she's talking to 4 different people all in one take. It's fantastic. I love it.
Wow.
So.
That's amazing. Are you doing anything fun visually to like represent these phone calls? Like, how sometimes like Sherlock or other shows would, do like a graphic to show texting or whatever.
Yeah. Went through ideas of maybe we want to do like split screens for all this, or like 24, or we'll see text messages pop up. But I ended up deciding I wanted it to feel like it's really happening in real time and we never leave. So I decided to always just be on one camera at a time. There's no graphics or anything that pops up. We do see her computer screens, but that's sort of, analog.
Yeah.
In that way. So we're not doing anything like that. We did really explore the room. So we might have a scene over in this corner or a scene over in this corner, or I'm not going to give too much away, but spend a lot of time at the desk. And then we're also shooting it in different ways. So depending on where we are in the script, it might be handheld.
Okay.
Or it might be like walking around her, or it might be static, or it might be real slow, whatever the script might be dictating in that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it ever gets boring. Like, we're not just sitting watching. There's always something going on besides just her. So that was kind of the fun thing that we did there, and I think it's turning out all right so far.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a great point there, where in a way the camera operator is another character here, and so like camera movement in this film is also super important to keep it interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah, we shot 2 cameras at a time because I knew I just wanted to get double the footage since of how much time we had in space. But it was always very cognizant of what is she going through right now, and how can we motivate that with camera moves.
Yeah.
Or what do we want the audience feeling in this moment? How can we motivate that with camera moves? So that was the goal. It's kind of an experiment. It's different than the other films that I referenced, because those had millions of dollars in a budget, and they could do it in a way that we didn't necessarily capable of doing, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
But we came up with ways to make it look good. I mean, it's very professional. Everyone who came through and looked at monitors was blown away by what we were looking at, so I hope that translates to the screen.
Wow.
And really, I hope at the end of the day people look at this and say that's not a low budget movie.
Yeah.
But it was.
Wow, that's awesome. And how many days did you guys shoot?
Yeah, so we shot 11 days.
Wow, that feels
crazy fast.
really fast for a feature, right?
And I pitched that to every single crew member as I was bringing them on board. Like, look, this is what we're doing. I took the approach that, yes, we're shooting a feature film, but I want you to think about this like a live show. Instead, we're shooting a live stage play, except we happen to be on a location. And in that way, I think it was a little easier to swallow, because we're just trying to capture a performance that's happening, that she's already rehearsed, and not so much like trying to piece this together a regular movie.
Yeah.
But I also had the benefit of not any location changes or lots of actors or extras to deal with.
Yeah.
I didn't have time of day changes. we didn't have to shoot half of it at night or anything like that.
So is it real time?
It was just,
like the...
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's more or less real time. So the whole thing takes place in about 90 minutes, and the movie will take place about 90 minutes. So
wow, that's awesome.
The other thing that's happening is part of the plot device is she can't be on a call longer than 2 minutes.
Oh.
So every conversation she has is under 2 minutes, and there's always a ticking clock that she's resetting every time she makes a new phone call.
Wow. Okay.
And people are always like, are these calls really 2 minutes? Yes, they are. If you look at the script,
wow.
everything's 2.5 pages, and every single time I edited, her conversations in advance, they were all 2 minutes or under.
Oh, wow.
So it's always changing that way. And there isn't an actual clock, like time of day in the background that you can see what time it should be. But if you put a timer up to it, you would see that it's basically happening in real time.
That's amazing. Because that's always like a pet peeve of mine when they're like, we've got 10 minutes, and you're like 30 minutes later,
I know. But there's some great real-time movies out there too that I love, that you could put a timer on. You're like, oh man, it was edited and shot in that way so that it feels real.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I wanted that aspect of it. So at the end of this movie, you feel like you've gone on a journey with her, even though the same amount of time has passed that you've been watching it. Right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you already kind of talked about some of your challenges. Were there any special circumstances because of COVID that you had to adapt to on set?
It wasn't so bad since we were shooting out in Georgia. Things are pretty open here anyways.
Okay.
We did shoot after the vaccine had been readily available for everybody.
Oh, nice.
So day one, I showed up and told everyone, look, the CDC guideline is that if you're vaccinated, you don't need a mask on, indoors. So you're more than welcome to take it off if you're vaccinated. I made sure all the cast was comfortable with that ahead of time, and everyone was fine. But for the most part, everyone still wore masks. In the movie industry, it's pretty normal still that everyone's wearing a mask around because they're extra cautious. So I think when you're showing up at set still today, you're kind of expecting that that's going to be the case. It's not like you're surprising anybody.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you have to follow these rules. They kind of already have been doing it anyway, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But other than that, we didn't have, buffet style food like we're used to. It was all individually wrapped stuff, and that was pretty much it. That was the only other difference.
Okay.
But
nice.
I wanted it to be a small crew for budget reasons, but also when I started putting it together, to shoot out here, we didn't know if things would be open again.
Right.
And for that whole year that we were closed down, I thought, if there was ever a COVID movie, this is it. It's one actress in a room talking on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do that with as few people as possible. So even when we were crewing up for it, I tried to keep the crew as small as we could in case, something like that came up and you needed, less than 20 people. If there's more than 20 people, then you got to have these certain things happening.
Yeah.
But
how many people
I didn't want to have to.
were on your crew?
We were up to 15 at the biggest.
Oh, wow.
Usually 12 to 15.
That's pretty, that's pretty small. Yeah.
It was very small. Yeah. And we had people wearing multiple hats, myself included. But I think it worked out all right.
Nice.
One of the things that we were discovering was moving at that pace was actually really creative for me, because you couldn't just shoot out a scene like completely from every camera angle.
Yeah.
We had to move on. And by the end, it was 11 days. I was talking to my DP and saying, can you imagine shooting this movie for 30 days? It would have been so boring. Like there's nothing left to come up with. But just the fact that we were moving through scenes so quickly, and like, we're just going to cover this scene from these two angles and then call it good.
Yeah.
And be creative with the blocking and, in a way that's still dynamic.
Did you do a lot of oneers?
Yeah, we did. It was always my intent to do that. I really like oneers, but I didn't really just want to walk around with her. So we came up with some unique ways that we could keep the camera rolling and have her like come in and out of frame or whatever it is.
Okay.
So we did that a number of times. Yeah. I want to say something like 20% of this movie is covered in a handful of shots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So It doesn't really matter though, because she's just talking on the phone, so it's not like we need to do anything exciting. I'm hoping that the dialogue will carry a lot of it, and her performance carries a lot of it.
As long as the story's interesting, it kind of reminds me of, Reservoir Dogs, in the sense that, like, Reservoir Dogs, a lot of it takes place in this, like, abandoned warehouse.
Oh, it's 90% a room, and it's 90, and most of it's 2 or 3 people.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So it can be done. It's not like it can't be done. The question is there enough happening that the audience isn't put to sleep?
Right.
Because I really like micro budget movies. I end up watching a lot of them, probably more than I should. But the thing that I always see is there's just not enough content in there.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
A conversation should be 2 or 3 minutes, and it's 6 minutes.
Oh,
there's no reason to cut this down. But if you cut all that down, you would have a 30-minute movie,
right?
Instead of
I've talked to documentary filmmakers before that say the same thing, where they're like, I could have cut my documentary down to 30, 45 minutes, but then
it's not a feature.
It's not a feature, and I can't sell it and make money, and so it's like, that's the problem that they struggle with.
So I was always kind of finding ways, like, what else can we shove in here to make it interesting, whether it's camera moves or performance, or it's another joke in the script, or it's something else intense happening. Just always trying to find ways so that there's multiple things happening at every given moment.
Are you gonna have
just one thing happening?
Are you gonna have like music? Because I could see composed music playing a huge key here too.
Yeah, so I found a composer.
Ooh.
And online who I'm working with already, and he's doing fantastic. I think this is the first feature he's ever composed. He's done a lot of like cinema score type stuff, but never anything long. He really gets it. Like, I'm amazed at. I don't even have a final cut yet. I'm just sending him versions.
Yeah.
And he's coming up with stuff already. This is exactly what I needed. So the whole movie is going to be scored by him, and it sounds fantastic so far. And I'm just real excited to hear it all together. Every time he sends me a new track, yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And I can just give him minor notes to fit it in.
That's awesome.
So I'm real happy
when you
with
find
that
a
so
composer like that, it's gold. Don't let go.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's going well so far. I originally told him I'm thinking like 60 minutes of music for 90 minutes, and I'm realizing I need way more music because there's nothing happening. So it's not always going to be like wall-to-wall score happening, but he is working, more than probably we originally agreed on. And it's just going to be one of those movies that has wall-to-wall music. I think that's going to be part of, what's going on all the time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, when will people be able to see it? Probably a year.
I'm trying to get this done. Well, I'm hoping less than 2.
Okay.
I'm trying to get it done for festival submissions in a couple months, so that it would do festivals next year.
Okay. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then it would be purchased or distributed by next summer.
Wow.
I'm hoping.
And what's the title? I don't know that you said the title.
Yeah, so it's called Solid Rock Trust.
Solid Rock Trust. Okay.
That's the name of the bank that they're stealing from.
Gotcha.
So
keep your eyes out for that.
You can find us. Actually, we have a Facebook page and an Instagram, Solid Rock Trust.
Oh, you Facebook fanboy. I'm just kidding.
And Instagram. And I don't know how to use Twitter or else.
I can show you if you want. It's a whole, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow. I just followed it on Facebook. There you go.
Thank you. So you can, we'll keep updating people there. There's not a whole ton of content on there yet because we just finished shooting.
Awesome.
But there will be more to come for sure.
That's so cool. And do you have any other upcoming projects besides that?
That's it that I can talk about.
Okay.
There's always something coming up, but a lot of times I'm not allowed to speak about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I put a couple links. I think there's like a link to links you sent me. Was it a link to your website? I think in the description below. There's links to Rick's stuff in the description below.
I think I sent the stuff for the movie.
Okay, great. Yeah, so check out the links below. There's also a link to his episode of Let's Rewatch, which was a very fun episode, super fun. So check that one out as well. And thank you so much for being on, Rick. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think
it's fun to always catch up with you.
Yeah,
every once in a while.
I know. Someday, hopefully, I'll be able to like go to Atlanta again, and we can actually hang out IRL.
I know you had a short out here.
I did, yeah.
Was that a year ago?
It was 2019. It was Zombie Debt was in.
Oh, okay. So it was. Yeah, it was right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to come. I think I was having a baby at the time.
Oh.
I was like, couldn't make it happen.
Those babies.
Secretly, I was like, oh, she's coming out here. I should go to that film festival and watch it. But next time.
That would have been fun, too, because that was like, well, it was in Dragon Con, and then it was in another like film festival that was just like in a brewery. And I was there like all alone. And I was like, okay.
Oh, no.
I'll leave now.
And it showed as part of a shorts program, I expect?
Yeah. That one was it was like a scrappy little film festival, but it was still fun, you know, that they did it in a brewery and everything. And
right.
Yeah. But hopefully again sometime soon. I definitely plan to submit to Dragon Con Film Festival again when they're doing it. I don't think they're doing it this year, unfortunately, which is a bummer.
They are doing Dragon Con, but maybe no film festival this year.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
I heard, because I thought it was happening. When does that happen?
Dragon Con? Yeah, it would have been. Let's see. It would have.
Or maybe just
been
happened
soon. Huh. Yeah, it says Thursday, September 2nd. Maybe they decided not to do the film festival. That's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Maybe they're rolling out
how
much they're doing.
Totally. Well, because if you think about it, it's like probably the worst case scenario of putting a bunch of people in an enclosed room. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. Well, that's been the scary part of is movies going to come back or not? Because that's exactly what it is.
I know.
Everyone sits in here for 2 hours.
Totally.
And breathes really heavy. And laughs or whatever it is.
Yeah. I did go and see Fast and the Furious 9 in the theaters because
yes. Oh, I forgot you.
So good.
You got on the Fast and Furious train.
I did. I'm on the Fast and the Furious train. It's very fun. But we
Can we talk about that before we end here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
But we like rented a theater, so it was like just a group of friends in the theater. And I was like, okay, I feel good about that. But I'm definitely still on the sketch side of, I don't know if I want to be in a movie theater yet or not.
Yeah. I went to go watch Tenet in theaters in the summer when it was out.
Wow.
Because Georgia had some theaters open at the time.
Wow.
And
was it worth it?
I ended up going with my with one of my neighbors who I'm friends with. And we were the only two people in the theater, so I felt very safe.
Wow.
But it was. Have you seen that movie?
I have. Could you understand the dialogue?
Okay. No.
Okay.
But I won't give anything away in case someone hasn't seen it. But there's a big plot point about having to wear masks in that movie.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And while I was watching it, we're still like mid-COVID.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's not safe to breathe the air.
Oh,
and it was so weird watching it with a mask on my own face. Like, oh, this is real life, man. Okay, real fast. Favorite Fast and Furious movie? What is it?
It's I can't remember. They all like blend together after a while.
Yeah,
it was like it's either 5 or 6 or 7. Oh, I do really like Hobbs
and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
I do really like that one too. That was really fun.
I've been on the Fast and Furious train since number 1.
Oh wow!
Thank you very much.
Wow. Okay.
And love those movies. Number 6 is my fave.
It's probably number 6 because number 6, I feel like there's one where it's like, okay, we have departed from a normal, like we have gone off the fucking rails, and it's great.
Yeah. 6 is the one I think that was the most down to earth.
Okay.
Like, okay, I could feasibly think some of this is happening. Yeah. Like, that's the one with the safe, I think.
Okay.
Where they're dragging a safe around.
Yes. There's the point where they start like jumping cars from one building to another. Yeah, that I'm just like
or using cars as like landing pads for human bodies.
Well, have you seen 9 yet?
Yeah.
Oh
so
my
God.
God.
I want to know what your thoughts were on it. Give me a 30-second review.
Okay, so here's the thing. It's like I feel like I used to be a film snob where like these type of movies I would have been like totally like Martin Scorsese, where I'd be like, this isn't cinema.
This isn't cinema.
Yeah. And then I started watching them and I was like, who cares? It's fun. It's bananas, but it's fun. And so like I enjoy it because it's just absolutely ridiculous. And if you go in just for the ridiculous good time, it's really fun.
Right.
But there are some things in this movie, all of them, I feel like, the first couple ones seem grounded in reality. But like they get to a point where you're like, okay, I guess you
cannot stomp your foot on a parking garage and have it collapse.
Yeah.
That's not
like,
real life.
I guess we're just pretending physics don't work. They don't matter or something anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But it is very fun. It's ridiculous. I think I like watching. I think I liked those movies initially, like ironically, like to make fun of them. Mm-hmm. And then it gets to a point where you're like, but I really like them now.
Nice. Well, welcome to the family.
Yeah.
But I think they peaked a little bit for me. I'm still gonna be there for number 10 and 11. I think that's what they announced.
Wow.
And then it's over.
But, really? They're gonna end it.
It went a little too far for me. I just feel like when it's just the Vin Diesel show and not the team anymore, then
yeah.
I mean, like seeing everyone do stuff.
And also when you like retcon certain people, you know, it's like
and okay. If you've seen the trailer, you know who we're talking about. But he was always my favorite, and I was so glad he was back. And then when they explained how, I went, "What? What?"
Okay, so that's
Can
my
you play that scene for me 2 or 3 more times because I have no idea what you just tried to tell me.
My biggest qualm with the new movie is like my boyfriend and I kept watching it, and mid watching it we're like, what is going on? Like, I don't know. I can't follow the plot of this movie, but I'm having a good time. But I don't really know what the stakes are or why or what exactly the bad guy is trying to achieve, but okay.
Right. Take over the world again? I don't know.
Yeah. It was fun though. It's lots of fun. It's ridiculous, but lots of fun. Well, thank you so much, Rick. This was a blast. Thanks for hanging in there through all of our technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm glad I could be here with you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you everyone who waited an entire half an hour only to be disappointed that we couldn't actually live
Turned
stream.
away at the door.
I know. I'm so sorry. Isn't that what life's like nowadays, though? It's just life.
Yes.
So I appreciate you being there. Thank you so much. Sorry that you had to deal with us with technical difficulties, but do remember that for future Filmmaker chats or past Filmmaker chats, besides this one, because this one will be public for everybody to watch over and over again, because you're just going to want to listen to Rick talk over and over again. I mean, we all know that, right? But if you want to catch ones you missed, you can support me on Patreon for $10 a month, and then you can rewatch every Filmmaker chat live stream, and it's just archived there for you to watch at your convenience whenever you want. And on top of that, I have other cool stuff like filmmaking templates and whatnot, and I'll even give you feedback on your short film or script for a lovely fee. So check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description below. And I just got a recent new Patreon supporter, so thank you so much for that. I can't remember who it was, but know that I appreciate you. So that's it for now, and I gotta go feed a dog. Spence is very hungry. He's impatiently been walking back and forth to the door. So have a good night and keep an eye out for Rick's feature film. All right, bye everybody.
Thanks. Bye, Ash. See ya.